If there's one thing I know about Wuthering Waves, it's that the combat is immaculate. It's quite engaging and it feels rewarding when you're doing it right. The Wuthering Waves combat overall has been quite a treat, and I still don't understand everything about it. I did grasp most of the concepts from playing the game, and once you understand it, it is pretty straightforward. Let's dive right into it, and I'll explain how the combat systems work and how the characters interact with each other. There are 6 elements, of course: Fusion, Aereo, Glacio, Conducto, Havoc, and Spectra. In other words, fire, wind, ice, lightning, dark, and light. Now, there used to be a way for the elements to actually react with one another, but they actually seem to have done away with that, and instead they work with outro buffs. Along with that, there are 6 things that characters can do. There are basic attacks, which also ties in the plunge attack. Resonant skills, which essentially is the elemental skill. I'll just refer to it as the skill. There is a heavy attack, which is when you hold down the attack button. This is rather unique across characters and normally ties into another portion of the kit that I'll explain later, that being the resonance gauge. There is a resonance liberation, which is a character's burst or ultimate, and then we have the intro skill and the outro skill. Each character, to my knowledge, will use at least 3 to 4 parts of these concepts in their kit. Everything is as it seems except for the heavy attack and the intro and outro skill. Let's take a look at Genshin, because she is a prime example of all of these concepts together. Her basic attack is, well, basic, and if she jumps, she can do a plunge, of course. Now, her resonance skill is a counter. You can hold it down and she'll do a counter, and anything that hits her, she'll negate the damage and hit them back. Now, here's where things get interesting. Each character has 2 gauges, a resonance gauge, and then the energy gauge, of course, that is tied to the ultimate, or the resonance liberation. I'll just call it liberation to not confuse anyone from here on. Now, the resonance gauge is tied to that character's gimmick. Most of the time, you will want to use this gauge in some way or fill the gauge, but this will really change from character to character. In Junyin's case, you want to fill up the gauge and then use the heavy attack or charge attack. From here, she will use her resonance gauge and a lot of effects will happen. So, to simplify it, she will gain a shield, and then she'll do constant area of effect damage, and then she'll have a big finisher. The shield will also heal the active character and mitigate damage when they're on the field. Now, if that made 0 sense to you, it all boils down to this. You beat the shit out of the enemy to fill up your gauge, then you do a heavy attack to swirl the cosmic aura of the world and kill everything around you, and then finish with a big boom while also getting a shield that will heal you. Still complicated? Yeah, I know. Each character uses this resonance gauge in a unique way, so you really have to see how each of them work. Now, from here on, it's pretty much the same as every character, but they have different effects, of course. The ultimate works like any other game, but the good thing here is, or bad, depending on how you view it, is that when you're performing your ultimate, with most characters, if it's damage based, that enemy will freeze and take all hits of the ultimate, which is pretty nice, honestly. Now, the next part is what is unique to Wuthering Waves, the intro and outro skill. If you made it this far, please consider leaving a like on this video and subscribing for more future content. You must be enjoying the video, right? And this will really help the channel grow. Thanks so much. So these intro and outro effects trigger at the same time. When you're in combat and you swap characters, then both of the characters will do a coordinated attack. Now, when there's a quick time event at the side of the screen, you'll get a huge bonus with these swap in and swap out attacks. You will swap to the next character and both of the characters would do a unique attack. And most of the time, the character that you're swapping to will be within attacking range of the opponent, so you can continue the onslaught of combat. Upon doing so, 2 effects will activate. An intro, which is a damaging skill with small utility sometimes, and then an outro, which is normally either a buff or some damage. To trigger these intro and outro skills, you have to utilize the whole resonance gauge that I talked about earlier. It is different per character, so I can't really explain everything here, but if you are able to use the entire gauge, then you're normally able to activate the intro and outro skills. With these intro and outro skills, the cool part is the intro skill, and honestly, Chisia is the most badass example of them all. The outro skill is more subtle. You may not even notice that it's been triggered, but it's normally a buff or a skill. Remember that these two happen at one time. So in the previous versions of Wuthering Waves, as in the first closed beta, I believe there was some sort of reaction-based system that actually buffed characters depending on which element interacted with the other element, but to my knowledge, that no longer exists, or at least there is no evidence of it. The outro skill is the interaction that these characters have with each other. It's very hard to tell, and I was really struggling to see because it does not actually update on the stat menus as of now, but from testing, it does indeed work. I used Genshin's outro buff to buff liberation damage or ultimate damage, and then Dungeon came in, and her hits went up from 50 to 74 per hit with her ult, which is roughly a 38% increase, so it does check out. The easiest way that I was able to verify that outro skills do actually work the way that it's intended is with Chicia, who will do a massive nuke when she swaps out. It's actually crazy how much damage Chicia can do on a swap, and she's free by the way. And that is the combat system of Wuthering Waves. I suspect the meta teams are going to have one main DPS and then two characters with two quick QTE buffs, or a dual DPS setup. Since you normally only buff one partner with your outro, you really only want one buffer with outro, and maybe another character that can sustain. Characters like Dungeon give 30% Havoc buff when they actually use their outro, so she would be good in a mono or dual Havoc team. Sadly, there aren't many other Havoc characters, but in the future, we'll have to see how that goes. It's a bit early to really dive into team building, and I will update it when I actually get to endgame, when I get more of a grasp on the concepts of the game. So yeah, that's pretty... Oh wait, I didn't talk about the whole echo system. And there's also an echo skill that you can use in combat. Oh geez. Still here? Great. Go ahead and like this video so YouTube knows that this video doesn't suck. I would really appreciate it, and you would really be helping grow this channel. Until next time, Enigma out.